Welcome to If the Public Only Knew, the show that pulls back the curtain on what it really takes to build and lead a business. Host Gary Cinderbrandt sits down with some of today's most dynamic CEOs, founders, and leaders to dig into their origin stories, hard-earned lessons, and the missteps that nearly derailed it all. These are unfiltered, no-hype conversations designed to inspire, challenge, and fuel your own journey. Now here's your host, Gary Cinderbrandt.
Welcome back to If the Public Only Knew. Today we're joined by Katharine Manning. This is a story you're really going to want to listen to. In some way, we've all been through some form of traumatic situation. Whether you're a soldier returning from an engagement, suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, or you've grown up in a family where things didn't work out so well. One of the most difficult things about these type of experiences is once they get in your brain, they don't have a clock. They don't go away. Our guest today, Katharine Manning, founder of Blackbird, and I'll let her explain where that came from, deals directly with that. Her career primarily began as an attorney, and through a couple of twists and turns, she realized that instead of being in a confrontational position with her law degree, she took some early experiences and melded that into her company, which she now runs today, which is Blackbird, dealing with individuals and organizations that want to go through change, but find certain things stand in the way. Katharine, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be here.
So let's start. Blackbird, where did the name come from, and how did you settle on it?
So the name Blackbird comes from that Beatles song, Blackbird singing in the dead of night, and in particular from the line, "Take these broken wings and learn to fly." And what I particularly love about that line, my work is all about helping organizations, companies, institutions come together in the aftermath or in the midst of something challenging, a big transition, a traumatic incident, something difficult. And what that song reminds us of is that when we go through something difficult, we are changed by it. We're not the same afterward as we were before, but that doesn't mean we can't go on and do incredible things. And the way to do that is together. So that's what that line reminds us, right? It's take these broken wings and let's learn to fly together.
It's funny if you look at, Lennon and McCartney wrote all those songs, but if you look at, I think it was probably more in Lennon's household than anything else. It was not a great household to grow up in. And you wonder what the derivation of those songs happen to be, but I can just see how meaningful that is. So when you're speaking with a potential engagement, a potential client, what are the things you're trying to identify to figure out if there's a good fit, if there's good alignment there for what you can bring to the organization? What are you looking for?
Well, often people will come to me with a couple of different postures. Sometimes they come to me because they understand that there is something that is challenging in the organization right then. That might be that they're in the midst of a merger or layoffs or some sort of big transition. It might be that they have just gotten a culture survey that has shown that people are not communicating well with one another. It might be that they know that just culturally for this organization, it's a difficult time. There's been so much upheaval in the world lately, and a lot of organizations have been struggling to find their footing in the midst of this. And it might be that there is some particular incident that has happened for this organization, like an episode of workplace violence. Sometimes organizations will reach out to me in the aftermath of something like that. So, what I'm particularly listening to with the organization is, are the leaders interested um, in listening? Are they interested in trying to find a path forward for transformation? My goal in coming into an organization is never about being what sometimes people call the sage on the stage. Like, I don't want to come in and just lecture at people for an hour, do a little tap dance entertainment, and then vanish again. Really, what I'm aiming for is organizational transformation. So I want the people there for however long we're together. What I want them to take away is some skills that will help them going forward. And those skills might be for how they interact with each other. So, one of the things I talk about is how to be a better active listener so that you don't jump in with problem solving immediately. So that when somebody comes to you and says, I'm having a really hard time right now, you don't instantly say, oh, I know what you need to do, or, it's all going to work out fine. So that you can just say, well, tell me more about that. What's going on? And let them actually feel heard. So I want them to walk away with skills to support each other, right? So that when I'm gone, they still have somebody in that organization that they know can be an authentic, active listener for them. Or alternatively, one of the other things that I do in my training is help them gain some self-care tools. So we talk about what are some things that you can do immediately, within minutes of exiting the room with me. What are some things you can instantly do to start taking better care of yourself in those minutes right afterward, and also over the long term, whether it's some breathing techniques that you can do immediately, getting better at at recognizing your own emotional response to interactions, or getting better at boundary setting, learning how to set boundaries more effectively and consistently over the long term. So my goal is always to give people some tools so that they can have these better skills to take better care of themselves and each other over the long term. So that's always what I'm looking for, Gary, is are we interested in that kind of transformation? Or is this really just, we want to check a box, we want to entertain people for a little bit, we've got to do something for Mental Health Awareness Month, and maybe she can come in and just fill that slot for a minute.
Fascinating. I noticed some of the organizations you worked with probably have cultures that date back far longer than you and I have been around. Some are probably in a growth mode. Let's talk about ones that are in a growth mode where it's a successful business, but the market's moving away from it, and maybe they've grown to 50 employees. The founder still runs the show, but going forward, there's only going to be 20 people left, and the founder's got to make some really hard decisions, not just around which 30, but also how to deal with the 20 that are left who were basically grew up with the others. Uh, you've got trauma above and below. How do you look at that? Are you called in before those announcements are made? Are you called in like the fire department response? I mean, how does that work? I'm sure you faced that situation.
Yeah, and it's a really tough situation. And I will start off saying that layoffs are never easy and I think should never be done lightly. Certainly there's a lot of research that shows the long-term effects that it can have on people economically as well as psychologically. But I also know that the situation you described, there are often situations where there's not an alternative to save the organization. And I'm thinking back to a conversation I had with one executive who was in exactly that situation. This was a company that I had worked with for years. I knew this executive very well. I knew that she cared deeply about her people and was very, very invested in doing this in the most humane and trauma-informed way. So to me, the key to making difficult decisions in a trauma-informed way comes down to the three C's. So it's clarity, consistency, and choice. So clarity means we're being as clear and transparent as we can. So we are not hiding the ball. We're making sure that people understand the decisions that we are facing. It doesn't mean we're telling, they don't have to understand every single decision that you're making because at some point it can get almost traumatizing hearing every every budget decision that you're making, right? But you want to make sure that people are not blindsided. You don't want people to feel like, wait a second, you've known this for 6 months that this was coming and you're just telling me, right? So you want to be clear and transparent about the actual financial situation that you're in and the decisions that are being made. And then consistency. So if you're saying that these are the rules that we're applying as we are making these decisions, you actually are applying the rules in that way. So you aren't saying, we're doing it this way, and then you have this out for, well, this is my favorite employee, this is my best friend. We cannot, right? Because that's not really that creates a lack of trust in the
Yeah.
organization, right? Um, yeah.
So let me throw a slightly curved ball your way. So primarily, I come from a wealth management background, and I
Mhm.
was lucky because at a young age, I was able to seek out mentors that I was probably more of a pain in the butt than anything else as a 25-year-old that knew less than nothing. But I listened. I kept my mouth shut and I listened and I observed people that were successful. I also observed people that were making a lot of money, and those two things didn't necessarily go hand in hand. I found the people that were most successful had great control over their extended family of clients, their book of clients, that they'd only deal with a certain type of person. In my work now, and I do consulting for the major firms, when I'm looking at a senior advisor, somewhat of my vintage, they're running substantial amounts of money, maybe $500 million dollars or more. And maybe they have 200 or 300 households they're responsible for. Well, a lot of those households came to them in their earlier years where they weren't that experienced. They took them on because they needed to make a quota or pay the rent that month. In the later years, it's much more relationship based. So you end up with a book that's kind of 50% people you love and you're doing most of the business with. Some of them may not have a lot of money, but you still love them. And the other 50%, they're just kind of there. You don't pay that much attention to them. And they could be better served elsewhere. And the advisors readily acknowledge it. But when you start to explain how unfair it is to hold those people hostage, the amount of guilt from the advisor's perspective for not fulfilling what they said they would do, or it's tailed off over time, that the normal move the advisor makes is to do nothing and just let that situation continue to fester. So in this case, it's almost as if there's a combination of guilt that crowds out the feeling that they should have, which I think should be one of understanding and empathy, that these people can do better someplace else. So when you get those two emotions running side by side, what does that look like in your world?
It's so interesting. I just find this such a fascinating conversation. To me, sometimes there is a disconnect between, like, people will say they're being empathetic when really what they're being is conflict avoidant, right?
Mm.
Sometimes being empathetic means making the hard decision more quickly. We have to be willing to look with clear eyes at the actual situation and decide where is this person best served, what is right for the entire organization. And that might mean making a really difficult decision in the short term. But for the long term, this is really what is the right decision. It's hard. It is really, really difficult. But to me, that's what it means to be an empathetic leader. It requires courage as well.
It comes, we start to tread on things where we know what the right thing is to do, and yet we do the wrong thing. Read the side of a cigarette pack. You want an example worldwide of cognitive dissonance. You can get people to readily agree on the facts, but they won't act on them.
Right.
They'll just say, I'll do it some other time, or I know it's wrong, or I should do this other thing. And that's usually the default pattern. So if you're consulting with someone, you're working within a company, and the presentation goes great, and reviews are great. Everyone agrees with what's there. You and I both know that the minute you leave that room and they go back to work the next day, they may think about things differently, but the problem set remains. And the easiest thing to do is to default back to the old pattern. How do you guard against that?
Yeah, it's something I confront all the time is the tail, how do we keep it going? And it's something that I'm constantly trying to figure out. So I do a few things. One is in all of my presentations, well, I guess even before that. So in all of my proposals, I build in options for lengthy or, products. So we can do the 1 hour webinar. We can do a 1 hour webinar with a follow up 6 months later. We can do the full day. We can do, so we can do a 1 hour webinar that has 3 emails that follow up, right? There's always options for lengthening the product. Um, in addition, through each presentation, I have micro commitments. I give everybody a workbook in the presentation, and then I'll say to them, so here, I'm going to give you 4 ways right now to manage an emotional response. If you're starting to feel yourself getting upset as you're having this conversation, we're going to talk about 4 ways to manage your emotion. I want you to pick one to practice over the next week. Now, write down which one you're going to practice. I also want you to put it in the chat, which one you're going to practice. Okay, so they have now committed twice to which one they're going to practice, right? Publicly and privately, they've committed it. So I make them do micro commitments. I also have a text list that I do. I send out a text message every Thursday about all of these issues. It's a free thing. I put it in every single training I do. It's a free thing that anybody who wants to can sign up. And it's just, again, a way to keep these issues front of mind, little reminders all the time. So I'm always looking for ways to kind of keep it up for people. They can join my newsletter, but it is a challenge. I agree. Like, how do you keep these topics in people's heads, right? And how do you make it easy to do? Because I'm a lawyer. I like the research. It's essential to me that all of this is very grounded in good research and data, but it's also essential to me that it be very, very practical and easy to apply. So that's the other thing is I'm always trying to balance those two things. I want to make sure that everybody understands that there's a good grounding in this. This is not just me off the top of my head, but I also want to make sure it is very, very easy for them to walk out of that room and instantly know what to do.
Coming from a world of finance, it's ones and zeros and it's all numbers. So you can judge things pretty easily from a quantitative standpoint as to the impact of training. And the rap that training has always had, or any type of programs, is you can't, it's in the expense column. It's a loss leader. It's got a long tail, and yeah, it's absolutely necessary. But getting down to being able to rationalize an expense is a lot easier when you can show an entry next to it that these people did X and they did Y. In your case, how do you justify that to people? How do they say, hey, listen, it feels great from a qualitative standpoint. We all agree, but what's it going to do? I'm running a business here. It might be a public company, but I've got people to report to, maybe some investors. How do you square that one?
It's really hard. And certainly it's very, very easy to do I loved this training. That's super easy to show. What's harder is how did this impact retention, burnout rates, all of that. But that's something I'm working on right now. So I've been working with some researchers, a wonderful woman named Beth Embry, who's a professor at University of Kansas. She's got a team of people. They're working with a client of mine who I've done some significant training with, as well as a few others. They've been engaged in this year-long research looking at the impact of this, what we call trauma-informed leadership training. And they're measuring the impact on all of these things, retention rates, absenteeism, burnout rates, secondary trauma, compassion fatigue. And they're working on a book as well as a series of articles where they can really show quantitatively. And what we're hoping is we'll be able to say this is when managers have these skills in how to communicate with empathy. This is how it affects rates of absenteeism, burnout, engagement, the things that you really need to be able to show for your organization.
Sounds like there's another book in the works.
I hope so. Yes.
So you're one person. You've got
Yeah.
a set of experiences, a lot of which were formed very early in your life, which manifested after law school and ultimately ending up at Main Justice. When you went to the Justice Department, was your goal to move into what you ultimately did, or were you more looking to be on the prosecutorial side when you took that job?
I wish I could say I had some great vision. I never really did. For me, it was kind of I couldn't believe my luck when I got the job at DOJ, and I wasn't really thinking beyond that. My background was I had come from I had a family history of domestic violence, and that pushed me to when I got to college, I started doing hotline work, domestic violence, rape crisis kind of work. That was the work that motivated me to go to law school, really because I saw again and again the ways that the legal system was kind of not doing enough to support the most vulnerable. And it was after law school that I ended up at DOJ. And my role at DOJ was a senior attorney advisor on victims' rights. And what that
Hmm.
meant was I did a lot of consulting and training and policy work, all on different kinds of victim cases, anything from fraud to terrorism, human trafficking. And it was a great job. I loved it. I just was so I don't know, I just felt so lucky. And one of the things that I was most fortunate in is that I worked so closely with victim advocates. So the victim advocates at the Justice Department work with the law enforcement officers and with the prosecutors, but their role is to help the victims feel more able to participate in the case, whether it's the investigation or the prosecution. Largely, they are folks who have a social work background. And as a lawyer, you learn how to build a case, but you don't necessarily learn how to listen super well, I would say. And the victim advocates really, really taught me how to listen much better. And I just learned so much from them. I was at DOJ for 15 years, and they just taught me so much in that time. And what I learned over the years was just how powerful it could be. In a criminal case. You don't always get the outcome that you want to get. Sometimes you get the case all the way through trial and there's a conviction and a sentence to the full amount, and even that is not really what the victim is going to want, right? Because maybe what the victim really wants and needs is to have their loved one back. You're not going to get that, right? Um, Maybe what the victim really wants is to get the full amount of their losses. It was a fraud case, they lost their life savings. You can get a court order that they should be paid back the full amount of their losses. What are the chances they're actually going to get that?
Yeah,
Slim
not
to
great.
none, right?
Also, I mean, the emotional toll on something like
Yeah,
that, there's no number that you can attach to it. It happened,
right.
and you've got to find a
Right.
way through. What was the spark, or was it always in the back of your mind? You you think about the law as especially working for the DOJ, you think stability, you think long term, you think you're going to do your required number of years and then move on to something else. What was it that inspired you to walk away from that level of stability and clearly a passion for what you were doing and move into what, for all intents and purposes, was a startup entrepreneur venture?
It was not an easy decision. I mean, I thought about it, gosh, for at least 5 years before I did it, I would say. Um, so a few things. One was, I was in the same role really for those entire 15 years. I was the department's expert, and I was given so much freedom. I could do anything I wanted. They let me work on any kind of issue that I wanted. I could go to any conference I wanted. I mean, they gave me so much freedom. I was able to go part-time when my kids were little. I could work from home when nobody else was working from home. They gave me so much. Um, at the same time, I had kind of learned everything there was to learn in the role. It got to the point, Gary, where it was like, not only did I know all of the all of the answers, I knew all of the questions. It was like a prosecutor would call me and he's still asking the question. And by the time he finished, I would say, well, I just sent you an email with the three cases you need. The third one is going to seem like it's not relevant. Here's why it is. And just call me if you have any questions. I mean, I knew it all cold.
Yeah.
And I was like, in my early 40s, and I just thought, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And I needed more, right? And at the same time, this was like 2018, and Me Too was happening, and I was seeing all of these conversations happening all over the world that were so exciting and in this area that I worked in. And in particular, there were ways that I felt like people were getting the conversation wrong. I felt like Me Too was putting so much on survivors. Share your story. Everybody needs to hear your story, without an understanding that when somebody shares their story of trauma with you, right, that you have an obligation as the listener to listen in a certain way, to provide support. And I felt like that was completely missing from the equation. And I knew, because of all this time at DOJ, I knew that you could do that. You could listen in a supportive way, and that was not at odds with conducting a full and fair investigation. And in fact, it was part and parcel of it, that it was difficult to conduct a full and fair investigation if the victim didn't feel supported. Um, and so it was that started me working on my book, because I thought, well, what is it that you think people should do when somebody discloses a story of trauma in the workplace? And ultimately, I decided there were 5 things: listen, acknowledge, share information back to them, empower them with resources, and return, check in later. So the laser technique, which is what my book is about. So I started working on that in late 2018. I sold it to HarperCollins in 2019, to my shock, because I thought, you have to have a big platform. You need to be like best friends with Oprah or something to sell a book to a big publisher like that. But I think just, I was lucky that I found an editor who really understood what it was about and why it was needed. And so once the book sold, that was when I left DOJ and I started working on the book in earnest. And then really the plan was, so that HarperCollins said, we need the book March 1st, 2020. And that was, I'm going to launch my speaking career. So I was supposed to speak at South by Southwest on March 17th,
Nothing like
2020.
starting small.
Yeah. And then, what happened in March 2020, 2 days before I was supposed to speak at South by Southwest, they
COVID.
canceled South by Southwest,
Yep.
and then everything shut down.
Yeah.
It was just, and I thought, honestly, what have I done? I've just left this, stable career to kind of launch a speaking career, and there are no speaking events anymore. Um, the things that I had going for me: one, I had saved 2 years of my salary before I
Good.
left. So I had
Smart.
savings. I had a DOJ contract, so, like a training contract. So I had at least some income. And fortunately, because it was COVID, no, there was not much we could spend money on anyway. So that was
True.
helpful as well. And I just started speaking for free anywhere I could. I just anything I could do. I did a Google alert for call for speakers, and anything that came in, I would just apply and kind of offer to speak for free, and it just slowly built up over time.
Wonderful. I want to go back and get a little bit more depth on why you were surprised that that editor at HarperCollins was interested in the book.
So when I first got my agent, she said, you don't have much of a platform, like because as a government lawyer, you are so used to you don't ever speak for yourself,
Hmm.
you don't have a Twitter following, you don't ever really speak publicly at all. It's not like I had articles published under my name. And what I knew about nonfiction publishing is that is what they are looking for first, is how many thousands of followers do you have? And I had zero. So my agent said to me, I think we might be able to get you a small publisher. And I said, that's fine. I don't care how big the publisher is. I just want to get this message out. Anything is fine. And then she called in June. I still have the voicemail message. She said, HarperCollins is interested. I want to get back to them by 5 p.m. How
That's
fast can I say
phenomenal.
yes?
Yeah, that is really amazing. I'm not all that surprised. And here's what I'm thinking about. Your 15 years with DOJ was kind of an entrepreneurial playground for you. You got to entertain your own ideas. You got to go where your feelings and your instinct took you, as informed by everything that came prior to that. And you got to see the best and the worst of society on a daily basis, knowing what it should be versus what it was, and trying to come up with things that how do we can't make this 100% better, but how do we go from 10% to 60 or 70? And it was like along the way, you had this observational perch of how society was evolving, of how your potential buyers of your book would be evolving, including the editor. So I would submit that there were things going on that you may not have had the hubris to make yourself aware of because you were so invested in what you were doing, which is by no means not the wrong thing. It was the right thing to do. But I think the reception that you had from HarperCollins, the reception that your book has had, and the reason it's still on a lot of lists is you were in tune with far more than just how you were interacting at DOJ, although DOJ was giving this focused energy of what the worst of society could be versus what it should be. And it seems to me that you had 15 years of a period where you could educate yourself. You could try different things. You could observe outcomes. You could fight for equality and victims' rights. And at the same time, you continue to do this. So I would say that while you may have felt it was an extraordinary leap to go out on your own, I would say that there's nothing else you could have or should have done.
Oh,
Is
thank
that a
you.
fair statement?
That's really
Looking
kind of
in, looking back, would
Thank
you
you.
still
It
be at
definitely
DOJ?
felt scary as heck, but yeah,
Oh
thank
yeah,
you.
look, I get it when financial advisors start out, and my job has an 80% to 90% failure rate at 3 years.
Wow.
It's a little different now, but they still fail. You have no plan B. You get a desk, you get a phone, you get a very small salary, and you get a shot. And if you don't figure it out right away, you have a problem. You're not there. And I don't know if I figured it out because I was smarter, I was stubborn, or both. But it requires being not necessarily a student of the law, but an avid student of human behavior, knowing that you're never going to learn it all. And there's always more things that can inform. What's next for you?
Well, working on the second book for sure.
Same
Um,
publisher?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Part of me is thinking about going on my own just because I want to get it out there. It takes
Uh-huh.
2 years. It takes 2 years to get it published when you go with a publisher. And I don't know if I can wait that long. I really want to get it out there. So I'm debating. But yeah, the next book is going to be more, if the first book is how to have these conversations in the workplace, the next book is how to create the workplace environment where you can have these conversations in the first place. So
Interesting.
how to create the workplace culture. So it's been a lot of fun having a lot of conversations with people about it, taking the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of years. It's been great. Um,
So I know there's in publishing now, there's a lot of authors that I follow who started out in print, but they find the right narrator and they've just skipped it and gone straight to audiobooks, which is a lot cheaper, a lot
uh,
more effective. And have you thought about that at all?
Interesting. No, I haven't thought about that. I don't know. Like I'm somebody who loves print so much, but I also love audiobooks. That's a
You
really
can always
interesting
bring the print out
idea.
afterwards. And
Huh.
there are a lot of publishers out there now who specialize in only audiobooks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Huh.
and I think it is, I follow a lot of science fiction. It's always been fascinated by some of the better writers. There's one fellow I've been following for years, Craig Allinson. And he's just, his books are funny, scary. It's just great.
Wow.
And he has an ongoing series. He's up to his 19th book and he brings one out per year. And
Wow.
after a while, you can't even get him in print anymore. He has, I think, one of the best narrators out there, a guy named R.C. Bray, who is an I think,
Wow.
stage actor. And
Huh.
it's fascinating. They bring these characters to life, and it's all distributed on audio.
Oh my
So that
gosh.
might be one thing to look at. I know your book
Yeah,
is
I gotta
available
check
on
that
Audible.
out.
Yeah.
Huh.
But if you
The
go
other
up,
thing, oh, go ahead.
yeah. No, I mean, if you go up and look at Craig Allinson and see who publishes those books, there's a good example of it.
Yeah, I will check it
Um,
out.
who else does a lot of audio? Jack Carr's books. He's a lot straight. He does both, but that might be one thought. The other thing I would think about, again, you being only one person, um, you have an extraordinary amount of wisdom, content, and knowledge that you've accumulated over time.
Thank you.
How do you create that as your legacy?
Well, I do feel like I'm a writer at heart. But at the same time, I really enjoy community. And one of the things I've been working on and thinking about a lot lately is how to build more community. I think right now, so many people are kind of talking past each other, and I really I want us to start talking to each other more. Um, so I don't know. I'm not sure if it's Substack or some other
So
place.
let me give you an idea because I've written down several of yours that I'm going to
Please.
develop in ways that I work. Your book, which is you read it, you write it, you read it, you edit it, you bring it back. It's a distillation of your best self at the time that was published.
Mhm.
Um, you could take that book, and I'm sure you could access it in the PDF format since you're the author. You could load that into an AI tool like LM Notebook, Google's tool. And basically, it's going to read your book. It's going to take about a minute or two to read the entire book. Now, LM Notebook, which is a Google product, produces what's called generative AI. I don't know how into all this you are, but I look at AI differently than most. I don't look at AI as, hey, what can I do with this tech? And then go find some way to use it. I look at it as what would be a cool thing to do, and do I have the tech to make it happen? So, there's four types of AI. Generative is what everyone's most familiar with. You could take the book, you could put it into and have it read, which would happen very quickly. And then from there, you could have a 7-minute video created for you with a professional voice describing your book. But more importantly, you could start to pose questions as if you were a participant in the audience to ask the AI, what would you do in this situation? It's going to go through your entire book and it's going to pull out certain pieces where one is connected to the other. and it's going to give you a response. It's going to say, is this a good response or a bad response? Now, if it's a bad response, you just put thumbs down. It'll go, oh, okay. Then it apologizes to you. Does this work for you? Until you get to the point where it sounds like your voice coming back. So what does that lead to? Um, we talk about what are we going to leave behind for people in some of these organizations. So if you were to develop that as a leave behind coach, almost a Catherine avatar, and by the way, this tech is not complicated. You could do it in a way where each one of the people you spoke with would have access from your side. I know you have a website from your side to the baseline concepts, knowledge, and all of the engine. And on their side, all their personal information lives there. They're having a one-on-one conversation essentially with you, but you're not maintaining it because of privacy issues. And all of a sudden, you're there permanently. And each person's conversation and response will be different than everybody else's because that interaction those folks are going to have is going to trigger a different response that it will be amazingly close to what you would say, but it would be highly personalized.
Oh
If
my
someone
God.
were to disclose, well, this is what happened to me 4 years ago that's affecting me now, the book would figure out, not just the book, but any other writings you would have. Well, what would I say in that situation? You'll be amazed how
That is
close it gets. And
incredible.
if it's wrong, you just see the chat and you go, no, 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 it's this. And then that goes into what's called the large language model. That is that's out there now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that is out there now.
Have
And
you done
there's
that?
talk to you offline about what
Okay.
I'm up to. I've got a few other things going on, but it's not too dissimilar
Wow.
from what you're doing. I've been in wealth management for 4 decades. I was very fortunate. I didn't even know I could speak publicly, but starting at about age 30 or 31, I was really successful. And Merrill Lynch asked me to create a pilot training program for other advisors. It ran 12 years with me and one other fellow. We trained 10,000 advisors, and training was 2 months long, 2 straight days, 6 hours each, a 30-day follow-up, then a coaching call. And a lot of those advisors are my clients today, some of their most successful ones out there. But I'm not going to be here forever. So I started to develop some thinking around, wouldn't it be great if I could do this? And the answer was, yeah, but I need $10 million to build it. And then with what's happened recently with AI, it feels like it took me 10 million hours, but I got to build the thing myself, which I'll describe to you. But it has components of what you're describing. So I don't know how familiar you are with AI or with that, but it's not hard to learn.
Hmm,
And all you've got to do is start to ask it questions and it'll respond in real time.
that's
Like, this
amazing.
is who I am, this is what I do. How could I make certain I can leave things behind? And the AI is going to go out and look for patterns. It's going to look for word patterns first. Then it's going to look for phrases that go together. Then it's going to say, okay, here's a similar situation. Contextually, this is what we think. Puts the answer up. Now at chat 3.5, you might say, on OpenAI, you might say, no, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Then it goes out and figures out what you want. At 4, the answer's a little closer. It's at 5.1 right now. It's like you're talking to someone.
Gosh.
And they're free. You can't break them. So that's just a thought because I think what you're
Wow.
doing is so valuable that it should echo down the generations, but not in a way
Hmm,
that it's a book someone recommends 15 years from now, in a
yeah,
way that your baseline of wisdom and knowledge can not only perpetuate, but expand based on how people interact with it around what your core values are. That's where I see AI really making a large impact. It's not a question of content, it's a question of knowledge and wisdom. So
that is just
I could talk
mind-blowing.
about this for hours. Catherine, thank you so very much
Thank
for joining
you.
today.
Thank
What an
you. It's been
amazing
so
conversation
wonderful.
and good for you. I mean, every time you want to give up on humanity, especially with the nonsense we're living through right now, and you're kind of at ground zero, so your view is probably different. Your faith gets a little bit restored because there are people out there like you. Keep it
Yes,
up, my friend.
same way about you. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for joining me. We've been chatting with Katharine Manning, founder of Blackbird. Take those broken wings and learn to fly. I think we just scratched the surface today. I think Catherine's got a lot more to say. Her book that is out there now on her approach regarding laser is one you should pick up, The Empathetic Workplace, 5 Steps to a Compassionate, Calm, and Confident Response to Trauma on the Job. I would add one more C. In that case, it would be compassion, but that's coming from you in spades. Catherine, best of luck in the future. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to If the Public Only Knew. Don't forget to follow the show and share it with anyone who's ready for the real raw stories behind the business successes. Join Gary next time for another powerful conversation that will leave you inspired and ready to take action.